Hey guys, welcome to Propelio TV. My name is Darryl Daik with my co-host Steve Rosenberg, and you're listening to the Real Estate Power Hour. We got a great show today. We have Randy Ramirez with Patten Title talking about everything you need to know as an investor and working with the title company, and we'll be right back. No.
Just want to feel important.
Did they find the payoff or no?
They did. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
good.
the correct. That's
Okay,
the correct
good.
closing statement.
Oh, we're on. I was like,
Welcome back.
Where's our cue? Welcome back,
It's the
Propelio TV.
red light.
I know. I'm like, what's that light on for?
It's bugging me.
I know. Anyway, again, Darryl Daik, listen to the Real Estate Power Hour. My co-host Steve Rosenberg, and today we're talking title. So if you're a real estate investor, there's lots of little things that you need to know when it comes to title and which title companies to work at, which is very interesting because every title company is different. Some, just like mortgage companies, some mortgage companies are investor friendly. They know the investor programs. They set themselves up to work with investors. That's their bread and butter. Well, some title companies are that way. Some title companies only like to work with realtors who are selling houses to people that intend on living in that house, primary residences, if you will. And some title companies are more geared to work with investors. And so those are the title companies you need to get affiliated with. We have Randy here from Patten Title, which is a company that I do business with. I know Steve does as well. And they are an investor-friendly title company. They throw one hell of a party as well.
They do.
Actually, they throw 4 hell of a parties every year.
Yeah. I would say that this falls under the devil's in the details category of real estate, right?
Yes.
I mean, as far as like down to the nitty gritty, because I'm sure you, as well as I, have been in deals. I remember when I used to wholesale deals, and it's stuff that comes up at the end, down to the wire. It's like everyone is racing to get this, racing the clock. And it's the title company, man, that comes through, that makes that deal happen or kills the deal.
Yeah, or sometimes an investor might have a deal with the title company, and we talked a little bit about before the show, you know, it's an assignment or it's a double close, and they didn't have that conversation with the title company. Then they get down to the end, and title company's like, oh yeah, we don't do this.
Yeah, like what?
What do you
didn't
mean
mention this?
Yeah, what do you mean you don't do this? Then you got to switch. You got to find another title company.
Oh yeah.
They got to start all over again.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important. It's not the sexiest subject.
No, but it's it's the most important
in real estate. You know, we'll try to make this show as sexy as possible.
Yeah, Daryl's gonna dance.
Yeah. No, but seriously, it is one of those things. It's like insurance, right?
Right.
Insurance is not necessarily the most exciting thing to talk about, but
until your house burns down.
Until your house burns down.
Then it's the most sexiest thing in the room.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And same thing with title. So thank you for coming, Randy. Thank you for coming to the show. So let's talk about some of the things that you run into. One of the first thing I thought of when you and I were just talking about what to talk about at the show today was double closings. So I know for a fact a lot of title companies just flat out won't do it. So explain to us what a double closing is. And I know you guys will do them, but why won't other title companies do them? So what is a double closing first?
Well, a double closing is where you have your seller, you have the middleman, which is typically the wholesaler. That's one transaction. The second transaction is where the wholesaler will sell to another investor, and that's the second transaction. So it's called a double close. We call the first transaction the front side, the other one the back side.
So for those who don't know what that is, so you have basically a wholesaler who's buying the property, actually closing on it,
taking possession
in their name, but typically they leave that room, they go to the next room, right?
Correct.
Either that's right simultaneous or right afterwards, and immediately selling it to the end investor who's going to buy it. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, most of the time that wholesaler doesn't tender money to actually close on that.
Yes, they do.
They do.
Actually, they do.
I think the answer is probably it depends.
It depends.
Too.
It depends.
Because I don't think that
I've
happens
done some
every time.
where I didn't put money up, and
I'm gonna put the screws on him here. I'm like, what's going on here? Let me see the paper trail here.
I want to see behind the curtain here.
Okay, let's just assume it does.
Okay.
In this imaginary world we're talking about right now.
So the double closings, you're correct. So the wholesaler may or may not put up money. If they don't, then the end buyer on the second transaction sometimes funds the whole deal.
Funds the initial transaction. So the seller gets their money, right?
Correct.
Okay, so
Correct. But a lot of title companies and underwriters do not like to do we call those pass-throughs.
Yes.
Where it goes A to B and then B to C. Well, C funds the whole thing. We have to wait for their money to come in. A lot of the underwriters frown on that. So,
Now, let me ask you this. I want to kind of dissect this as we go.
Sure.
Do they frown on it? It is legal, but do they frown on it because people are always doing there's bad apples in the bunch, and that has caused people to go, there's too much potential for something to go wrong, and that's why they don't like doing it?
Correct. They feel it's too risky.
Too risky, right. And they want to be risk adverse. They don't want to get themselves wrapped up in an issue.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's risky from the seller's perspective, right? Because if the wholesaler actually doesn't fund, and
He sold his house.
the end buyer changes their mind or their loan
Right.
falls through or whatever, now you got the seller who signed a deed, thinks they're getting a check for whatever, and the other transaction never closed. They're like, well, what are you talking about? I closed. They may not even be aware of what's going on
there's
in
a
the other
double
room,
close.
right?
Right.
So there's probably been a few people, I imagine, that were burned by
Unscrupulous people maybe took advantage or whatever. They never were able to close or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Maybe not intentionally, but maybe something happened, and then you have a pissed off seller.
Right.
Who
Which
calls up
turns
the
into lawsuit litigation.
Texas Department of,
Yeah,
I don't know who you
exactly.
guys regulate by, Texas Department
of Insurance.
Insurance, okay.
Yeah, TDI.
So how do you mitigate that? I mean, how do you get around that as a title company and as the investor?
Well, we unfortunately we don't do pass-through files.
Okay.
So the only way we could do double closings is if there is transactional funding that the wholesaler will secure, typically 24 to 48 hours. They'll secure those funds.
Can you explain just what is transactional funding? What does that mean?
So basically, transactional funding is where the wholesaler borrows the money for a couple of days.
So they're actually funding it.
So they're funding it. They're funding the seller. Then they're turning around and selling it. And so that way, with the sale of the back end, they'll be able to repay the loan back.
So this is a real close.
So this
Yeah.
is a real close.
So we do that. We'll do transactional funding.
Yep.
So we lend to, most of our loans are we're lending to investors who are going to buy a house, fix it up and resell it, or fix it up and keep it as a rental. A transactional funding is where it's a wholesaler who has no intention of touching the property whatsoever, but they're going to sell it as a wholesale deal, but maybe the timing doesn't work out. They've got to close on it because their contract is up with the seller.
Right.
They've got someone else ready to buy it, or maybe they don't have somebody else ready to buy it. Sometimes they don't, but they need short-term money. They don't plan on even touching the house. So it's a transactional deal. Typically, it's funded to the wholesaler directly, and they don't even make a payment by the time they get it sold. They got it sold
But
really quickly.
they're really threading the needle on that.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm a conservative investor. I'm just someone who buys a straight deal. I'm pretty basic, plain vanilla. I mean, I've done those and I know how to do them and I get it. But you have to be more risk adverse, or at least have have some potentials in the wings to go if this deal doesn't go, right? You got to have an exit strategy.
Sure. Yeah. From the wholesaler's perspective, they got to be willing to own that property.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
Just like from the lending standpoint. If I'm going to fund a loan, I got to make sure that if something happens to my wholesaler or my end borrower or whatever, that I'm still going to be good in the deal. I always say, my borrower gets hit by a train, then I own this property now. I got to make sure I'm in the deal right. Same thing from the wholesaler.
But now let me ask you this. If you fund a deal like that, let's say they do this transactional closing and you fund that deal, what interest rate are you doing it? It's a hard money loan.
It's a hard money loan.
So even though this investor has a deal and he may be in good for it, he needs to refinance that, right? I mean, at some point he can't live with that if that's the course he's going to take. If he's going to say, I got to hold this long term, this isn't going to happen.
Yeah, if they plan on but typically they're not holding it long term.
And I guess if there's
like I said, they normally don't even make one payment.
Right, standard. I get it. I'm thinking probably in the smaller percentile of that.
But that could happen. Maybe they just couldn't wholesale it and they decided, you know what? We need to fix this house and pursue a different exit strategy. Maybe they want to flip it, or maybe they'll hold it as a rental. Then they take that route.
Now let me ask you this: when you're doing, and I just kind of will stay on this double close for a while. What are some red flags that you guys may see as a title company that you look at and go, you know what, we ain't doing this deal? Like what are because obviously you guys are very highly regulated. The title industry is very regulated, and there's obviously a lot. If you're doing a double close, it's even like, hey, we got to make sure everything is tight on this deal because we cannot have any variances.
Right. A red flag that it's going to probably not go through is the end buyer, what we call the end buyer. If we have a hard time communicating with them and they're, not responding, typically that's an indication that,
This may not be going.
this may not be going. And 9 times out of 10, that's the case. Because if they're not forthcoming in the very beginning with everything, then that means they're probably going to bail.
So you're talking about on a double close.
On a double close.
So if you got the wholesaler who's probably pushing and pushing and pushing.
Yeah, he wants to roll.
Not that wholesalers push real hard on deals. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking the wholesalers.
Nothing wrong with pushing.
But if a wholesaler is not pushing, then
there's a problem.
They need to be in a different
They're
business.
broke. Yeah,
they need to be in a
broke.
different. They need to go sell pizzas, something less stressful than wholesaling. But yeah, wholesalers are typically push.
Yeah, because they want their money, right? They got a window going.
So then you're like, well, I got to talk to your buyer as well, and this buyer is it's an 800 number and nobody's answering.
Yeah,
right. Then there might be something wrong here, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Is there an average statistic of deals that have gone through that don't go through in the double? Because again, you're bringing the stars have to align, so to speak, in this scenario.
Right. I would venture to guess, I don't know, about 25% maybe.
Okay, that just don't happen.
That just don't happen. Yeah.
So that starts with your relationship with the investor, because you guys, the great thing about being in the business of lending to investors and doing business with investors is you get a lot of repeat clients.
Business.
You're not doing a one-off deal with the guy that's buying a house to live in. You may see him 8 years later or whatever. You're doing multiple. So you have relationships with these people. You know who you can trust, and if they're new, you probably have to tread slowly. I imagine at first, right?
Yeah.
So you know who they are, make sure they're doing things the right way, and because there's lots of things that could happen when it comes to title. I can tell you from experience, I've had people that have, that have gotten squirrely on deals, and they duped the title company, quite frankly.
Really?
Yeah, and it can happen. Yeah, we had a deal where a guy, and there's nothing anybody could have done, but he sold the house 3 times in the span of 4 days. No, he sold the house, got a loan from me, and got a loan from another hard money lender, all in the span of 3 days.
Wow.
And nobody knew. So the guy who bought the house, paid cash. The next day we closed. We didn't know he was selling the house. We closed on it, but the lien, nothing had been recorded. So the new title company didn't know. And then after he got my money, I loaned him 70%, whatever. We got another loan from someone else. He got paid 3 times on the house. There's not a damn thing the title company could have done. Am I right?
Right.
So what happens in that scenario?
You wouldn't know.
Like who goes after him? Do you guys go after him? Does you?
So in our scenario, so we have a title policy, which is where Randy comes in.
And you're saying, hey man, you
I
guys
call
said
up Randy. I'm like, hey,
we got a problem.
I just found this out. Actually, how we figured it out, we didn't even know. We had the loan for a year. We didn't even know.
A year?
We had the loan for a year.
You guys are on it.
So he came to us. The house was paid off. He wanted just a loan to pull some cash out. So he paid like a slot machine for a year. So we're not running title checks if they're paying us.
Right.
So then he stops paying. So then we go to the foreclosure process, right? So then my attorney's like, hey, this guy didn't even own this house. He sold it the day before you closed on it. I'm like, oh, great. So he sold it to the buyer, did a loan with us the next day. So
the buyer has multiple liens on this property and doesn't know.
But my borrower, the one that defrauded us, had no right to do a loan with me because he didn't
own the house.
But the title company didn't know that. But the title company insured me. They provided a title policy. So we pick up the phone, XYZ Title, hey, this is what happened, and they wrote us a check.
Yep.
So does somebody go after that guy at some point?
The underwriter.
The underwriter. And the underwriters are attorneys. So every title company has an underwriting team. So it's a team of attorneys, and then when a claim is filed, then those attorneys go after.
So what in this scenario, what happens to a guy like that? He gets fined, he gets arrested, he goes into mortgage jail. Like, where does he go?
It depends how far they take it. I can tell you with this particular individual, and this wasn't that long ago. This was maybe a year and a half ago. They were not happy. The underwriter was pissed off. They were pissed because this guy did blatant fraud.
Right.
So they sent out a memo to every title company. All the underwriters floated this guy's name around and figured out who it was, and they were going after him. Like they're going to get.
But what do they get? Like, do they sue them? I mean, is
They
there?
sue them, but that's fraud too. So they could get the FBI involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the FBI has a whole division of mortgage fraud now.
Exactly.
You know.
And they take that stuff pretty seriously.
Well, I don't know if that'd be considered mortgage fraud, but they have real estate fraud, I imagine. But yeah, the FBI, because there's so much fraud in
Yeah.
everything these days, but there is certainly a lot in real estate.
So let me ask you this: in this industry, right, real estate, there's so many different ways. It's like that's the yin and yang, the positive, negative of this industry. You can do any deal any way you want. You can slice it up. He and I can buy a deal on something in Antarctica overnight. I mean, we could do whatever we want to be creative with. That's the positive, but that's also the negative, right? And like you guys are kind of the third party referee to say, you know what, this is legit or this is not something we could do. How do you guys regulate that? Because you guys do a lot of business. I mean, you guys are in Dallas, Austin, Houston. What other cities?
Correct. Dallas, Austin, Houston, and we have a small satellite office in San Antonio.
Okay, so
yeah.
you guys are pumping a lot of business. I've seen the office in Houston. It's pretty big. It's pretty plush. Parties, I get
Nice
it. Yeah,
white leather chairs.
Yeah, it's nice. They got a lot of snacks. I see the snacks. We don't have snacks here. I noticed like that.
What's going on?
Yeah, we don't get snacks. But again, like there's a lot of transactions going on, man. I mean, so how do you regulate that stuff?
So we close roughly 450 files a month.
A month,
company-wide.
Wow.
And I would venture to guess 40% of those are probably investor deals.
Okay.
So, made up of double closings and
so 600. No, just kidding.
Yeah. So we just kind of, once the title search is run, that's going to let us know, hey, is this going to be able to close in this tight time frame, or are we going to need to get an extension and really dig in and do some work?
Okay.
So some of the red flags are death, divorce, bankruptcy, tax suits, unpaid taxes, city, county.
Those are just off the top bing flags that are popping.
Those are the main ones that we run into, problems we run into. And that can definitely kill a deal or significantly delay it.
So before we move on to the next kind of closings, if I was an investor and I was wanting to do a double close, or if I look, maybe I'm just inexperienced and I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to do this. What are some things that you would recommend that they prepare for, and that you go, hey man, if you're going to do a double close, first of all, these are the things you need to have ready. These are the things you got to think about, and these are the things you as the investor need to make sure are teed up and lined up before you walk into the closing door. Because again, when you're an investor, I think the first transaction I ever did was a double close. I had no idea. I still don't even know what I did. I mean, it was just like a whirlwind of stuff going on.
Yeah, a lot of moving pieces.
A lot of moving pieces.
A lot of people involved in it.
I had no. I mean, it's still that way with me, but
He does better with pop-up books.
I do better with pop-ups. I like the pop-ups. Yeah, I like a lot of colors. So what kind of advice would you give to an investor to say, look, these are the things you should know and think about?
Definitely vet out your seller.
Okay.
Make sure ask the seller all kinds of questions. Make sure they own the property.
That's a big one.
Ask Darryl.
I mean, I kid you not, we had a squatter under contract, and we didn't realize they were a squatter. No one did until we were into the process and started asking all these questions and so forth. So definitely make sure you have a good seller. The property is fairly clean, and how if you're going to do a double close, are you paying cash? Are you going to get transactional funding from Darryl? And make sure that your end buyer is reliable and has a good track record.
That can perform.
That can perform, exactly.
Do you recommend that that you become fully transparent and you tell the end buyer what's going on, or is that a case by case, or what's your?
Typically,
that's not really your job to do that, right?
Yeah, I guess not, right? I mean, you're not there to teach them a lesson.
No, and you can't be fully transparent with the end buyer because you don't want the end buyer to know about the seller. Because typically, in a double closing, that means the wholesaler is getting a pretty big spread.
Sure.
Otherwise, they would just assign the contract over.
Sure.
So,
yeah. So they don't necessarily want the seller to know how much they're making on the deal.
Exactly.
Put it
yeah.
in layman's terms,
typically-
right?
Right, exactly.
Because it's
Vice
probably a
versa.
pretty big. Someone's going to go.
It's going to piss off the seller and be like, shit,
What
I
the H?
could have got a lot more for this house.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And it could kill the deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we saw a deal last week. The guy was making like 42,000.
Oh, I did one. The guy made 100 grand on a wholesaler.
Well,
Yeah, that's the biggest wholesale fee I've ever seen. But they made 100 grand on it.
wow.
But you know what? The deal made sense to the end investor.
Yep. You know, and I remember when I was doing wholesaling, right? And I would sit down with the seller and I would say, listen, just so we're on the same page, I'm here as a business to make money. And if you have a problem with that, then we shouldn't do business. My goal is to make this much, but if I make this much, I'm going to go for it.
Sure.
I'm solving your problem. You have to be okay with what you make.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're not okay with me making money and you making what you make, then let's just not even keep going. And I tell them, I say, listen, and the way I did it, I would do an assignment, and I would, I mean, they had to assign it knowing what I was making, and I would say, this is what I'm making. If you don't want to do it, then kill it. But I have the buyer, and we have a non-compete, and you can't go around me, and but I'm like, I would just, never did I have anybody have a problem because I was very upfront, and I told them, listen, I'm here to make a profit. Right. That's why I'm here. And I mean, at least my experience is, and I mean, we do, the most I think I did was like 42 on a deal or 40 or something. But I mean, normally we make about 20, 25 on a deal. And I mean, I'm sitting at the closing table in between them, thumbs up, and they're doing the transaction. I'm on the HUD, and they're, it's going through, and everybody knows what's going on.
They're eating your popcorn, waiting for your check.
Yeah. Where's our popcorn today, by the way? I don't see that.
popcorn.
That's weird.
We don't have our timer on, but
We
I
don't
imagine
have our timer on.
About ready for a break. I know we haven't had our timer all day.
We don't have a timer, yeah.
Anyway, we don't take a break. We have Randy from Patten Title. I keep wanting to say Patent Law Firm. They turned into Patten Title now, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Very cool.
Patent law firm is still around. They handle all of our document preparation.
Sure.
So
Sure. Which is.
And what are the odds of two people with the same name?
I know, right? I tried to pull that off.
How'd you guys do that?
Yeah, Ashley Patton, good guy. Great guy. Very smart
good
guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very smart guy. I don't even know what Ashley did there, because he's not really in the operational side. But I had a problem file one time, and I'm like, man, I need Ashley on this, man. And he opened his shirt, but
Superman, huh?
Yeah, I mean, he knows his stuff. He's a good guy. So
Cool.
Anyway, we'll take a short break. You're listening to the Real Estate Power Hour with Steve Rosenberg. My name is Darryl Daik, and we have Randy Ramirez from Patten Title, and we'll be right back.
The Propelio Academy, an all-in-one education resource for training in wholesales, subject to wraps, short sales, flips, rentals, BRRRR, property management, and more. Go to propelio.com/academy to get your scholarship today. Propelio.com. What does Propelio offer? Lead generating websites, access to true MLS comps, off-market lead lists, and deal alerts. Get them all today at propelio.com.
Hey everyone, this is Steve Rosenberg, Darryl Daik, and Randy Ramirez with the Real Estate Power Hour with Propelio TV. And so we were talking about double closings and all the stuff that goes on with double closings. Oh, I got the timer started. Thumbs
There
up
we
on
go.
that. I got that going. So one thing I want to talk about is I got a funny story. So, this is a little bit different because this is about people that buy these tax liens, right? And it seemed like investors that buy these tax liens, there's always a problem with the title, right? And there's always just some issue going on with these, which I guess maybe that's why
They're complicated. You got to know what you're doing to buy tax liens,
Well, I don't think you have to know what you're doing to buy them, but you need to know what you're doing if you want to buy them right.
Yeah, if you want to make money at them.
Yeah, so, back in the day when Canada was just killing it in the dollar and they were just, knocking out of the park and their dollar was stronger than ours, there was a bunch of Canadian investors, that would come down and they would buy all these properties at the tax sale, And it was like Cannonball Run, right? They'd come down to Dallas or to Houston, and they would get in a bus tour, and they'd drive around at all these houses, and they see them, and then they go to the auction, and they buy them on the steps. And then when they would leave, they would hand us the contracts and the management agreement and kind of go, here you go, manage the house, right? And they had no idea. I mean, they just had money, and they wanted to place it. So, and they were so happy. I got this house for $5,000, and we're thinking, yeah, there's probably a reason. It's a tax sale. And so this one guy, he buys this house and he's up in Toronto or something like that. And he's like, oh, could you go and could you look at this house and there's a tenant in there. It's already rented and just take it over. I'm like, oh, okay, that's easy. So we send the tenant a welcome letter, blah, blah, blah. House was sold and now we're managing it. We don't hear anything. Send them another one, don't hear anything. We don't have a number, so we don't know. And so we don't know how long the guy's been living there or anything. We don't even know if the guy's living there. And so then we send him like, okay, well, let's just send him an eviction notice, see if that sparks him to do something. So we send him an eviction notice, and this guy finally calls me. He's like, hey, I'm so-and-so. I live at this house. And he goes, I just got an eviction notice. I said, hey, how you doing? Thanks for calling me. I said, yeah, we're trying to get a hold of you. Didn't know if you were living there, so we were just going to start the legal process to make sure that we removed you correctly. And he's like, whoa, wait. He's like, but I'm living here. And I'm like, no, I get it. I go, but you need to live there and pay rent. There's a new owner, and we're managing the property. And he goes, have you seen this house? And I said, no. I said, I haven't actually. He goes, the guy who bought it, did he see the house? And I said, I don't know. I said, I assume he did. I have no idea. He goes, you may want to come look at this house. And I'm like, okay, like why? He goes, the house has a tree in it. I'm like, what do you mean? I go, you mean like there's a tree like kind of on it? Like fell on it? He goes, no. There's a tree in the house. I said, I don't understand. Like there's a tree growing in the middle of the house? He goes, there's a tree in the house. That's all he kept saying. I'm like, okay, obviously. So me and my business partner, Pete, I'm like, come on, man, let's go. We got to get in the car. So we go in.
I got to see this.
I'm like, you got to believe this one. So we get in the car. We go down. This is down by U of H, University of Houston. Not the best area of town at the time. So we roll up on this street, and each side, the guys are doing transactions, we'll say, on the corner. And, me and Pete drive up like two cops. So, we get out of our car. And I kid you not, man, there is a tree like the size of a redwood that has fallen through the house and has continued to grow.
Wow.
And the tree is all the way through the flooring of the house, through the roof, on the floor, and it is growing out the front of the house. The tree is growing, like the leaves. And the guy comes out and he's like, welcome to my tree house.
Oh my God.
So we go inside. I'm like, this is cool. So we go inside. And literally, we had to climb over the tree to get into like the kitchen area, right, to talk to him. There's no power. There's no water in the house. And I'm like, so I don't understand. I said, you live here? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I live here. And I'm like, in the tree house? And he's like, yeah. He's like, it's better than living on the street. I'm like, okay, gotcha. I said, well, how do you deal with power? Like, how do you get power? He goes, I use the battery for my car. He goes, I charge it. He goes, and then I bring it in. And he goes, and I power up all the stuff at nighttime. And that's how I do it. And I go, what do you do for water? And he's like, I go to the 7-Eleven or whatever. And he's like, I get jugs of water. And I'm like, you do that every day? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. I go, well, how do you make money? He's like, I get like air conditioning units that people are throwing out, and I refurbish them and I sell them. And I'm thinking to myself, you're the guy who's stealing my vacant unit air conditioning units is what you're saying. Yeah. So anyway, so we go through this whole thing, conversation and everything, and I'm like, so I'm thinking in my mind, like, okay, he goes, listen, he said, if I leave, this is going to turn into a crack house. He goes, I'm actually doing the guy a favor. He goes, and then the city's going to red tag it, and then it's going to have to be demolished. He goes, me staying here is kind of protecting the house for this owner. I said, that's a good point. I said, well, I'll tell you what. I said, if you were going to move, where would you move to? He goes, I'd probably go to a weekly motel. And I said, well, what would you pay for that? And he goes, I don't know, maybe like $100 a week. I said, well, what would you pay to stay here? And so we go back and forth. So long story short, I negotiate, and I get a lease signed for like $250 a month from this guy. I give him like the check stubs to turn the deposit slips to get in there. So Pete is like, I cannot believe that you got that guy to sign a lease for $250 a month to stay there.
Goodness. Yeah.
So we go and leave, and I'm like feeling good about myself. So I go back and I call the owner. I'm like, hey man, there's a deal. I said, I got $250 a month. I'm like, you have a tree growing in your house. I tell him the story. I show him pictures. He's like, that's all you got? He's like, you don't think you could have gotten more? I said, do you even know if there's a title issue on this property? So this is where it's going back to the title. Yeah. And he's like, a what? I said, a title issue. Title, like when you buy a property. He's like, I don't know. He's like, I just bought it. I bought it and it's mine now. I said, long story short, man, this cost this guy, it must have been close to $100,000 in problems because the city got involved and this title was so there was I don't know what was wrong with it because we kind of washed our hands of it, especially after his tenant moved out. So we're done with the treehouse. But again, it goes back to, and I don't know, I guess going to my question on this is, when people buy these things, what is something that they need to think about before they actually, their money goes hot and they buy these things at the foot, the courthouse steps?
A suggestion is to try and purchase a property report from a title company.
Okay.
You can do that.
Does Patten do that?
Patten does that.
Little plug?
Yeah.
Nugget?
That was a nugget.
And the property report is just a basic report, just showing what's on title, and that's really a good thing to do before you start pumping money into it because they could get stuck with it.
Now, and obviously this happens quick, right? They're going looking at these properties. Some are taking on, they're looking at like a SKU number basically, and they're going, okay, that seems like good. That seems good. Is there a way to do that on a massive scale or no? Like on
You talking about buying tax sale properties or just at the foreclosure auction?
At the foreclosure.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Is there a way to do this where they're, to know that it's not unencumbered and there's no clouds on it and all that stuff?
They can do a title search. You guys would do a title search for
How
someone.
long does that take?
Typically, we can get it back in a day.
Oh, okay.
24 hours, 48.
It's not giving you it doesn't give you a title policy.
Correct.
It's not insuring you.
You're
But
correct.
they basically do a title. They search
They're
the
saying
title.
on the surface, from everything we've seen, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah,
Right.
these are
It's
the liens on it or whatever.
Right.
It's IRS or property taxes or mortgage
Exactly.
liens or whatever. So then when you go to auction, you know what you're buying. But I mean, that's for the big boys. And going to the
Man, I've
foreclosure
seen
auction,
so many people get burned on those.
you got to be willing to lose money to do that.
Right.
And so the guys that are down there buying are buying properties every month.
Yep.
And they win some, they lose some, and for the
Yeah.
they're winning for the
They're
most
winning
part.
more than not, but they've got the money to lose.
It's not a place for a new investor to start. I will say that because it can be risky. But yeah, that's
Absolutely.
I mean, title search does a lot. I mean, title does so much for investors. The one thing I learned early on in my career was how to figure out how to fix title problems, and it's something that served me well over the years. Because when I first started in the industry, I was a loan officer at a mortgage company.
Not just a loan officer. You were a loan
I was
officer.
a loan officer. Well, not the powerhouse I am now.
No, not the Daryl Daik you are today. Of course not.
I wasn't D-trained yet.
Not D-train. You weren't the D-train yet.
But all these files I was doing, they all had title problems. And so at the time, the title company, they don't like title problems.
Some don't. Yeah.
It takes time and manpower
And research. You got to research
to
this
work
thing, right?
out the problems.
Exactly.
There's
Exactly.
someone like I used to always do airship affidavits. Someone died and they didn't have a will, and now you have all these people who have a fractional ownership
Absolutely.
of this house. So I had to teach myself, how do I fix this? I'm like, this is a good deal. This is a fixable deal. Title company's like, we ain't jacking with this. You got to figure it out yourself. We'll tell you what to do, but we're not going to do the legwork. I mean, I used to go to. One time I went to prison to get this guy to sign sign an airship affidavit because there was like.
I'm not even going to ask how you got it signed. I'm not even going to ask what you did.
Well, I won't tell you. Anyway, but there was like 10 heirs, and everybody signed off except for this one guy. I'm like, well, where's he at? He's in prison. I'm like, which prison?
I'm going.
I'm like, which,
How far?
yeah. So I went and I talked to the guy, and he was like, yeah, whatever, no problem. Signed off on it.
Really?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: what are some things like investors that the laws change, right? Things evolve. What are some things that are kind of like coming around that's saying, hey, you know what? You need to, as an investor, you need to think about this as a title issue that could pop up, could bite you, could get you in trouble, legal trouble or whatever that you're seeing, or could make the deal not go.
Typically, when you have that many heirs, like Darryl just brought up, we had a file where you couldn't find two of the heirs. So, but the investor was like, no, let's just push through it. Let's just push through it. And I'm like, no, you don't understand, because you have to have everyone sign off on everything. You can't just insure around it like he wanted to do, so he
Right.
could proceed. So things like that. That's
I had a situation where I was buying a deal and it was owned by an LLC, and that LLC was no longer. They shut it down. So it was owned by the LLC shut down, and basically no one knew how to reopen it to clear title. How do you deal with something like that? I forget what they did. I don't even know if I ended up buying that deal because I think it was such a problem they could not figure it out.
They'd have to reactivate the LLC.
Right. Yeah, they're gonna.
Yeah, but there was some reason why they couldn't. There was like a problem that it was like
Probably money.
well, they
Probably
made, you
didn't
know
pay
what? You know what? I think you're
See,
right.
I know how to fix
Yeah,
title.
I think you're right. I think they owed like franchise tax.
That's
So
what I'm saying.
if they had to do it, they were going to have to
Gotta
pay
pay the
that.
franchise taxes, get it reinstated, and then the entity
That's what it was.
would have the
Right.
right to sign that
Right.
over.
Right.
Right.
They had to
Until
basically
then-
become an LLC again.
Yeah,
right.
that's the only
And
way
then
to
they're
get around it.
subject to all the back money that's owed or whatever.
Yeah. But these are the things that investors run into that they need to educate themselves, especially if you're a wholesaler. Boy, they run into all the stuff, right?
yeah.
They run into all the stuff. So you have to educate yourself, find a good title company who's investor friendly, that will work with you and maybe even help educate you, because at some point it's a lot quicker to get involved and do it yourself, I imagine. Imagine some of the legwork you push off back onto the investor.
A little bit, but a lot of it we try to be very hands-on. We had a file we closed just last week, had 13 errors.
Yeah.
And they were
Any in
kinda
prison?
None in prison.
Daryl's got a guy.
I got a guy. I got a guy on the inside.
I got a guy inside.
I know who to call. if
No
we ever
pun
run into that.
intended.
Yeah, but they were kind of scattered all over the DFW Metroplex, and we walked them, with that airship affidavits. There's a questionnaire that they have to fill out.
Yeah.
Right.
So we take the time, we walk every single person through everything and make sure that they understand, what they're filling out, and make sure they're filling it out, thoroughly and everything. So we'll be glad to,
Yeah, and
help
that's
them out.
helpful, especially when
Very.
if it's an investor who doesn't even understand what they need to do.
Right.
They just want their check at the end of the day.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
sometimes
So-
when there's title issues, there can be a lot involved, a lot of paperwork, and stretch out for months on end.
What's the most common, I don't want to say mistake, but most common thing that you see that causes deals like not to go? Like that you go, like you see it coming.
Honestly, it's the financing that falls through.
Really?
at
See
the
these
end.
guys, man, they never come through.
No.
They never come through.
They need to call Noble Mortgage.
Yeah, that's a nugget. That should be a nugget somewhere.
NobleMortgage.com.
Oh, you got a nugget.
That's a
There
nugget.
you
That was
go.
a gold nugget too, man.
But that
There you
is
go.
true, right?
Yeah.
No, it's very true.
Because your lender is only good as your lender is good, right? I mean,
Exactly.
It's easy. Like I can write your pre-qualified letter all day long.
right.
Right.
I wrote one for Steve earlier.
I got one. I went and got some Gatorade. I got a pre-qualified letter.
Yeah, but
That's an IOU.
You got to check out who you're doing business with. If they can't perform,
Exactly.
I don't care. I don't care what it
Exactly.
costs you. If they can't perform,
Yeah,
they can't
and
perform.
I guess the challenge with you guys is you can't really tell them, right? I mean, that's not your job, right? I mean,
Right.
you're just a third-party referee, basically.
Exactly.
And you have no, nothing.
No, we have to remain neutral.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't give them advice, opinions, nothing.
So that's a good point. So
Absolutely.
a lot of people probably that are new, again, the pros out there that watch the show, they understand, but they don't even know what a title company does. So
it's a good idea.
what does a
Good
title
point.
company do? And then
What
you
do you
said
do?
stay neutral, and that's right. You're supposed to be neutral, right? You guys are
Right.
like Switzerland.
Yeah, right. You guys are Switzerland of the real estate world.
Right. We can't side with the seller. We can't side with the buyer. If things go south, we just have to.
Can't side with the lender.
Can't side with the lender. No, like I said, you got to remain neutral, and if there's a conflict, you kind of got to just let them work it out.
So explain to people what is title? Like what is that? Like to people that don't know and they're going, yeah, I got to go to title company. It's all these people asking for stuff, being a pain in the ass, and I get there and everything has to come together at the end. What are you guys doing when you're doing all that? When you're asking for my blood and my family and my information?
So basically, we're what a title company does. Obviously, we issue title insurance. So in the title insurance, we issue owner's policies and lender's policies. So obviously, the owner's policies will insure the owners and the
That they have
lenders.
clear and
But yeah, so
title.
explain that. So when you're getting title, what is that?
So you're basically getting.
Talk to me like I'm a moron.
That's the only way you understand.
I need my pop-up book. I know I'm my pop-up
That was
book.
an easy softball.
Yeah, I got this. I got this.
Wham!
Bam.
So basically, the title policy ensures the buyer that the chain of title is free and clear, and basically that it's been handed off from seller to buyer from the beginning of time to the present.
Okay.
And basically that everything is smooth and clean and clear. And that if we do issue a title policy and someone comes back and says, oh my gosh, that was my father's property, I didn't realize he owned it, call us, That's where the title policy kicks in, and we'll take care of it.
Got it.
And the same thing from the lender. So
Right.
every lender out there requires a title policy. So from our standpoint, we have to have a first lien on the property. They're insuring us. So again, when
So they're saying, hey, Darryl, you're good.
yeah,
We promise
once they
you're
say,
good.
a lot of times there might be something that's a judgmental call, and one of my employees were like, "Can we do this deal?" And I'm like, "If they'll insure it, you know what
It's
I
on
mean?
them,
If
yeah.
the title company will insure it, because
Right.
sometimes there is something that's subjective. It's a business decision at a certain point.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, I get that. I go, let's call the title company and see if they'll insure it. As long as they'll insure it, I know I'm protected. But I've been doing this a long time, over 20 years. I think I've only had to file on my title policy maybe 2 or 3 times. I think 3 times maybe, and that's not very much.
No, that's really
Not for as
Especially
many
being in the-
transactions as you do.
Yeah, especially in the
Right.
investing side.
And the investing side, the
Exactly.
hard money investing side. That's
Right.
And only one time was it the title company's fault that they just missed some property taxes that hadn't been paid. But the other 2 times it was just blatant fraud that someone had did.
Yeah.
The title company couldn't have done anything.
Like
They
the one
couldn't
you're
have-
talking
like
about,
the
the
one
guy-
we just did. Yeah, they couldn't.
Right.
There's no way anybody could have figured that out.
Right.
But unfortunately, I'm like, sorry, man.
Yeah.
But that's what it's for.
That's what title policies
So
for.
it's basically in essence it's an insurance policy that you're saying
Exactly.
this is a good deal. This is a good house with
Right.
no encumbrances, nothing on it.
Exactly.
Big word, by the way.
That was a big word.
You're still.
I'm proud of you.
I saw you mumbling it as I said
proud
it.
of you, buddy.
Thank you. So and so basically that's what you're doing. You're saying, hey guys, this is a clean deal.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then if something happens down the road and they go, hey, this was not a clean deal, you guys are insured to you make it right? Like what are you guys responsible for?
So like for example, if a family member comes back and says, "Oh, my brothers excluded me from this," and so
Which could easily happen.
which could easily happen.
Like if someone
especially,
dies and there's no will, and there's all these brothers and sisters. Maybe there's
Don't
8
worry
of
about
them.
her over there.
Maybe there's 8 of them, and they're like, let's not tell him.
Right.
We don't want him to get the money, or we don't like him.
Or he'll say no.
They hide him from y'all.
right?
They hide him from everybody, and then
Right.
all of a sudden he pops up years later. Hey, I heard this house sold, and I didn't get my share. And then you're like, oh man.
So so in that scenario, what happens?
So in that scenario, if that person really does have a stake in that property, they would call our underwriter and file a title insurance claim.
And what do they get?
They would get, so basically they're staking a claim in the property, and the policy would have to pay them whatever share that they rightfully deserve.
If
Up
somebody
to the value of the title, up to the value of the policy too,
up
though,
to the
right?
value of the policy.
Yeah, not
Correct.
necessarily what they paid for it.
Right.
Whatever their policy.
Whatever
shows.
the owner's policy is insured for.
and what is that normally? Is that a fixed amount or is that
Normally it's a loan amount
It's
if there's a loan involved.
correct.
But
Yeah.
if there's not a loan involved,
Then it's just the amount of the purchase price.
yeah.
okay? So they can't say, hey, it's gone up X percent over the last 5 years.
Oh, no.
I want that X percent.
Yeah, no, they don't get
Yeah.
they don't get to
They don't get any of that.
based on the appreciation at all.
Now, what if someone's doing an owner finance deal? If I'm owner financing and I'm carrying the note, how does that come into play? Same?
If so
I stumped him.
back up. Yeah. Rewind the tape a little bit.
Well, it's the same thing. Now you're the lender.
I'm the bank.
Right.
You're the lender. You're
Okay.
getting title
Yeah.
policy to protect your lien. The buyer who's buying it from you, you're going to give an owner's policy.
Exactly. We're going to give the owner. Yeah.
Do people do that? Do they? Well, I mean, I know they should. I get it, but
Not everybody does.
really,
I mean, some owners that owner finance don't do title. They just
Some
they may
don't.
close at a title company and not get a title policy.
Correct.
They would do
We-
that?
We don't close any deals without a title policy.
I was going to say.
But some title companies will, though,
Some
right?
title companies will. We do not.
Really?
Every deal we close, we issue a policy.
So okay, now I've got another question.
But that's dangerous.
Yeah, that I mean,
Very.
and what is it?
Let me just throw a golden nugget out right now. if you don't mind.
now you're
ready
predicting.
for
Now
another
you're,
nugget?
Now he's predicting the nugget.
This is an easy nugget. Get a title policy.
Oh man.
It's a no-brainer. Always get a title policy.
Always.
Always get a title policy. It's like insurance. Anytime you need insurance, you want to have insurance. So get yourself a title policy. That was an easy one. See, I tried to give it to you.
That
Steve.
was an easy one.
I mean, I was setting you up. We'll get you another nugget. I promise.
I want a nugget. Yeah.
So speaking of closing without title policies. We have a deal where the guy's wanting to refinance. He owns 2 of the 3 properties. One of them he's refinancing a hard money loan. The others he's owned for a couple of years. One of the 3 he bought without a title policy, and now we're not able to do that deal. So that property we're having to completely delete.
Is it because is there a cloud or anything, or it's just because there's no policy on it?
There's 2 dead people on title. There's a federal tax liens on there.
So it's got problems.
Oh, major problems.
But if there was no encumbrances and there was no cloud, even though because it's kind of like a break in the chain, right? In essence, right?
In kind of, I guess you could say.
But
it's more a cloud than a break in the chain.
No. In that scenario,
yeah.
is But in general, if I bought a house and I didn't get a title policy, right? And now Darryl buys it from me, and he wants the title policy insurance. Will you do it as long as, because I broke the chain, right? By me not getting it, I kind of broke the chain, but there's no clouds.
Well, you didn't necessarily break the chain. You just didn't ensure that the
I just didn't get insurance.
that the history of the property was free and
I
clear.
took the risk.
You took the risk.
Now, okay.
But would you provide a title policy on that deal?
If we could, depending on
It's subjective.
yeah, it just all depends, kind of case by case basis.
Even if you did a title search and there was nothing on there, you would still be like, he didn't get a title policy on that last one. Because I guess that raises the element of risk for you, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that.
All right, so we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk, get a little about subject to, and if that comes into play when you're doing a subject to and stuff like that. So this is Steve Rosenberg and my semi-good friend Darryl Daik, and we have Randy Ramirez with Patten Title, and this is the Propelio TV with Real Estate Power Hour. We'll be back after the break.
The Propelio Academy, an all-in-one education resource for training in wholesales, subject to wraps, short sales, flips, rentals, BRRRR, property management, and more. Go to propelio.com/academy to get your scholarship today. Propelio.com. What does Propelio offer? Lead generating websites, access to true MLS comps, off-market lead lists, and deal alerts. Get them all today at Propelio.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Propelio TV, the Real Estate Power Hour. This is your host, Steve Rosenberg, and my good friend Darryl Daik with Noble Mortgage. And we have Randy Ramirez here with Patten Title. And so before we were talking about clouds on the title and all the things that happen, and just kind of going in this investor world, subject to. People are getting property subject to, and obviously it's an easy, I don't want to say easy, but it's an easy way to get a deal, I guess you could say, from an investor's perspective, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have to get a loan. It's right. Easy in that regard.
Right.
How does that affect you on your side of things?
Well, we do close subject to transactions. We've got one underwriter that's pretty liberal, and they'll allow them. It's the thing with subject tos that we kind of tell investors: make sure that you and really the seller is aware that the note could be called due at any point in time, and that the seller would need to just be prepared for that. Also, you as the buyer, if the note's called due, typically in the subject to paperwork, there's a time frame that you would have to refinance and pay that loan off.
What is the time? Maybe you know this. What is that time frame they give you? I mean, I guess. Well, then back up. How often is the note called? And if it is, what is that? I've never heard of a note being called personally. Not saying they don't.
It's very rare, as long as the payments are made on time and they're not seriously delinquent at the time you're doing the subject to transaction.
If you're not causing red flags to be popping, I'm guessing they're going to leave you alone.
Right, because they want to make that interest.
Right.
Typically, there's.
Yeah, I've never heard of a note being called.
Yeah,
on a subject to transaction.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like you said, if they're delinquent and now you have it's in the delinquent department of that mortgage company.
You got eyeballs
and
on
they're
it.
looking into it. Yeah, and they're
Yep.
now maybe they've done a title search and they're like, oh, wait a minute, this person doesn't own this house anymore. We got to call this note, because typically what happens on a subject to, for those of you who don't know, is
Maybe you should explain what a subject to is.
yeah. So a subject to is when someone has a mortgage on a property and an investor is coming in and agrees to purchase the property from the seller.
The seller.
Maybe they give them a little bit of money at closing, but they're not moving the loan. They're keeping the loan in place. They're going to continue to make the payments on it. But technically, there's what's called a due on sale clause. And a due on sale clause is where the lender says, okay, if you change ownership, you sell this property, you put it into an LLC, or you sell it to whoever, you're supposed to pay that loan off.
Yeah, and
Yep.
so the definition subject to is you're buying it subject to the existing
Subject to
mortgage.
the existing lien.
Yeah,
exactly.
So technically, like if I have a loan on a property and I find out it's not in their name anymore, I can be like, you know what? We're calling this note. You got to pay us off. So that's the risk, right?
Right.
There's the rub for
That's-
the end investor. If the note gets called, they're like, we didn't make this loan to you. We made it to Joe Blow, who's off in Hawaii now with his money. He doesn't care,
Exactly. Exactly.
That's
And
what.
the nugget,
But do you provide
the
title insurance
nugget
for
in
that?
this one is that's the St. Germain Act, is the due on sale clause.
Did you see that, folks?
See that?
You can teach an old dog new tricks.
See how I pulled that one out? I know a little bit. I know a little
Saint
bit.
Germain. That's a nice liqueur too.
Yeah, that one I made up, but anyways. So, let me ask you this. And this wasn't a subject to, but I want to ask it. Like, I'm going to say it was maybe 2010. I had a house that I was basically doing a wrap, selling as an owner finance wrap to an investor, actually as an end buyer. And we had to notify the mortgage company to let them know. And this was new, and I don't know if they're still doing this. That's kind of, and I don't know if you know about this. Like, we had to notify the mortgage company, and they had to sign off that we were wrapping the mortgage on a sale. And there, I thought this deal's gonna die. There's no way. And they actually let it go. They were fine. They were okay with it.
When was this?
This is like 2010, huh?
Yeah, I was gonna say right in the heat of the.
It was in the heat of battle. Yeah. I don't
They're
know
like,
if
as long as you're paying it, we're good. We don't need another foreclosure.
Exactly.
we don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it was.
probably
I
what
don't
it
know if they're
was.
still doing that or not. But I mean, it
I
was
haven't
like,
heard of that.
yeah. I mean, it was
haven't
like it was at closing.
They were just glad someone was actually returning their phone calls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I remember the title company's like, I need to make a call. We need to get something signed from the lender that they're willing to be okay with you wrapping this. And
Yeah.
I was like, this thing's gonna die.
I don't think any lender would agree to that now.
No.
Yeah,
I don't think so
you're
either.
probably right.
No.
But I'm curious if that's still the case. If you still have to do that.
I don't think anybody does. I mean, I think if
Well,
you
it was the
call,
title company. The title company had to.
Oh, the title company.
The
was
title
required.
company said we have to get approval from the lender that we're gonna wrap this.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And that's why I'm thinking this deal's dead. Like,
Yeah.
we're again down to
Yeah.
the wire.
Right.
It's like, oh, we got this one document I need signed by the lender. It's like, what lender? Your lender.
So when you do a subject to, Randy, you're still providing title insurance,
Correct.
but all you're doing is providing title insurance to the buyer that there's no other liens or encumbrances on the property. There's that word again, encumbrances.
That's a big word.
Liens and
It's
encumbrances.
not a nugget, but it's a word.
Yeah,
It's a word.
yeah.
And so, but you're also giving them a disclosure saying, hey, just so you know, XYZ mortgage company could call this note at any
Exactly.
time. So
Per
you-
the St.
I
Germain
imagine you have a
Act.
disclosure.
Yeah.
Per the St. Germain Act.
There's wow.
Yep. And typically they're in the other mortgage companies in first lien position.
Sure, yeah.
So,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, that's interesting.
And
It's good to, even in that case though, it's good to get a title policy.
Absolutely.
I mean,
good to get it.
What is it, in general? It's a percentage, right? The title policy is a percentage, I believe, from what I remember.
Well, it's a regulated number.
Yeah.
It's a regulated number. They have a chart they go by. You can only, it's
Right,
the maximum
but-
number you can charge
Exactly.
based on the loan amount.
Yeah, but from what I remember, it was like 0.7, or is that sound about right? Or I mean, it
Depends on the size, right?
Does it?
The bigger the loan amount, the smaller
Percentage
the
goes down. Yeah.
percentages.
But it was minuscule. I mean, compared to what you're saving and getting, again, like I'm thinking to myself, why in the world would you risk that of all things?
Yeah, right.
You know, like that to me, like you said, that's the glue in this whole thing.
If that's the deal killer, it's not a deal.
Yeah, I agree.
If getting a title
Exactly.
policy kills the deal that much, it's just like getting insurance.
Exactly.
If
Right.
having to get insurance of any kind, whether it's hazard insurance or title insurance,
Yep.
makes the deal not work anymore, then it's not a deal.
Yeah, you
Right.
what you need at that point is a job
Yeah.
because you have no money.
Yeah. Or you need to renegotiate.
Yeah, you need to renegotiate this deal. If that turns it into a bad deal, you
Yeah.
need to rethink this
That's
thing.
too thin of a deal anyway.
Yeah. So what are any other things you think investors should know about as far as title policy and the trials and tribulations?
Kind of, I don't know if we touched on assignments
No,
today.
really.
Kind of one of the things that, because we do more assignment deals than we do double closing.
Sure. It's
Yeah.
a cleaner way to do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cleaner way.
It was for me.
One of the
And an assignment, let's define an assignment for those who are new. So assignment is someone has a contract, the investor puts a property under contract. I'm going to buy this property from Steve, and I'm going to put, as the buyer, I'm going to put Darryl Daik, and I put and/or assigns. Then I have a separate addendum that goes with the contract that Steve doesn't see, and I go to my investor and I say, I'm going to assign you my contract that I'm buying from him for, let's say, $100,000. I'm going to assign it to you for $20,000. So I'm making a $20,000 assignment fee. So how do you guys handle that? You had mentioned, we talked before the show, you have what's a separate statement for Steve and for me. So Steve is not aware of how much money I'm making, which is valuable to me.
correct.
Because I don't want to piss off Steve. He's a big guy.
That's right. Don't
He's
piss
not
me
the
off,
smartest
man.
guy. So
I'm not the smartest.
he results to violence when he gets irritated.
That's all you got, man. That's all we got, right? At that point.
I mean, so how does that work?
We don't all have the socks, man. I mean, look at both of you guys have the socks today.
We thought you got the memo,
I
man.
did not get them sock memo.
You can't even
man.
afford socks.
I can't even afford socks. Look at that, man.
So on assignment deals, one of the most important thing is those little words and/or assigns, because
Yep.
a lot of folks forget to do that.
Yep.
So that's super important. And with assignment deals, we do separate closing statements. What that means is you would have your own. So basically, you'd have a seller's closing statement, list everything, sales price, taxes, whatever, yada yada, and how much your take home is.
Right.
On your side, you're the wholesaler in the deal. So yours would be separate as well, and your assignment fee would be paid by the end buyer. So, and that would be on a separate closing statement. So that way, you don't know how much he's
Right.
making off of the deal.
Right.
And there's also double assignments, where
It's like a double spy.
so we actually do quite a bit of double assignments.
Really?
Where
You have two wholesalers.
you have two wholesalers. So like I had one that I closed 2 weeks ago. One wholesaler made like 14 grand, the other one made 8 grand off of it, and they just double assigned it. The end buyer knew about the double assignment. They were getting a good deal. They didn't care.
Yeah, that's coming.
And-
That seems to be more
and-
common now.
Yeah.
Wholesalers are working together on things, and maybe you got one wholesaler who's great at finding deals. You've got another wholesaler who has the audience of investors that are easy
Makes
to
sense.
sell to. So this guy's like, you know what? I'm just going to find the deals and buy them cheap.
Partner.
I'll flip them to you. You flip them to whoever. Maybe they don't want to
Yep.
deal with the end buyer.
Right.
Yep.
Is that what you see?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, when I did them, I would do an option contract, and so it wasn't a regular contract, a bilateral, basically, because in my understanding is that when you have a regular contract, I have to perform, you have to perform, bilateral. An option contract means you have to sell it to me, but I don't have to buy it from you. So I have a 45-day option period that I have the option to buy it, but not the obligation. So they would sign an option agreement with me, and then when I would find a buyer, they would then sign an assignment. This is what I'm going to make. Remember we had the discussion? This is my assignment fee. And then I was just a line item payoff on the HUD, but they knew. They signed. They had to.
Yeah.
They had to acknowledge it, because then once they gave me the assignment, that's when they would get the contract with them and the buyer, and they would be buying it directly from the buyer.
Yeah.
So different. That was back in Stone Age days, so that was a different deal. But
Yeah, that's changed.
yeah, I'm sure it has. I'm sure it's been a different
Yeah,
way now.
that whole world has evolved quite a bit, because that business hasn't even been around that long.
No.
When
I was doing it, this was like in 2002. I mean, wholesaling, I don't even know if that was the term. I don't think that was even the term.
Yeah, I don't
there.
think it was a term. Back
Yeah.
then. I don't remember that term.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's pretty new and recent. Also with wholesaling, or assignment deals, all of our offices are very well versed with investor deals and assignment deals. So we're very careful when we're dealing with the seller, working with them to get their payoff. We're working with them to get, whatever information we need.
And you understand the sensitivity of the situation.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and that's
So
valuable. 'cause
that's
it's
so
huge.
valuable.
I can
man.
tell you from the lending standpoint, when we work with a title company that we don't know, and maybe they're not, an investor-friendly title company, it can be painful.
Oh man.
Sometimes they'll see there's a wholesaler coming on.
Like,
and
who's
they're-
this? What's
And
who
they even
are
like
you?
our loan
Right.
papers, they don't. And we're a hard money lender. They're questioning everything, and I'm like, and then you have to sit there and try to educate them. And sometimes they're like, well, we can't do this. I'm like, what are you talking about?
That's the default. Can't
Yeah.
do this.
They get nervous. They don't know what to do. They go
Yeah.
because the investor world is completely different. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a lot more faster paced and they're
Yeah.
doing things that are not the conventional way.
Exactly.
And not to say that they're wrong or illegal, but it's just different than what
It's
they're
just-
dealing with. They're
right.
used to dealing with people that are buying a house to live in.
The cookie cutter.
There's one lien being
Plain
paid
vanilla.
off. There's no wholesaler.
Exactly.
Totally different
Yeah.
world.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
look, Randy, I appreciate you guys coming on today and talking to us at Patten, because I know that, again, I've used you guys. He's used you. We know a lot of people who use you. And so, if people are looking for title and you're an investor, you got to talk to these guys because they know what they're doing. And that to me, that's the key. You can do all of this stuff up front, but if you don't close and get the property, none of that matters.
Or if you had a title company that just won't close your
Yeah,
type of
I
transaction.
mean, if you don't
Yeah.
punch through the goal line,
yeah,
and that's the goal line, right? That's the day you walk away from this.
you could lose the deal.
Yeah.
If you have an irate seller and your title company backs out the last minute,
Yeah, I agree.
you may have not time to switch titles.
Yep.
So give me your contact. We're about out of time. Give me your contact information.
So you could find us, all of our contact information at pattentitle.com.
So PattenTitle.com, the offices in all the major cities in Texas, Houston, Austin, Dallas, San
And
Antonio.
you guys on Facebook and
We're on Facebook and we're on Instagram. So
And if you use Patent Title, you get to go to these parties. If you haven't been to a patent party,
I've only
haven't
been
been to a
I gotta
patent
say, I've
party.
only been to one party.
you've only been to one.
I've only been to one. Maybe I wasn't invited to the others. I'm not sure, but
Maybe
I'll
that's
have to
what it
talk
is.
to someone about
I'll bring
this.
you next time.
I think he intercepted your
You
invitation.
can
I think he did, yeah.
You can be my
Yeah.
+1.
There we go. Deal.
Yeah, they
Deal.
throw great parties. Anyway, you're listening to the Real Estate Power Hour. Thank you for joining us. As always, my good friend and co-host, Steve Rosenberg. Thank you again, Randy,
Thank you for
with
the
Patent
invite.
Title for joining us. I'm Darryl Daik with Noble Mortgage and Investments. You can find me at noblemortgage.com or on Facebook. And, of course, Steve's everywhere.
I'm everywhere, man. I'm
He's
everywhere. Yep.
He's with Empire Industries, EmpireIndustriesLLC.com. Great property management company. We will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, I'm Ryan with Propelio. If you like what you saw, please subscribe. Turn on those notifications and stick around for more. We have tons of content like this all over our channel. So if you want to learn more about real estate investing, stick around, watch Propelio TV, and we'll see you later.